He karakia tātou. Ha ki roto, ha ki waho, kia tau te mauri, e kōkiri nei i ngā peke, me ngā heke, ko te rangi Māori e tāku e rāpu nei, haumie huie,
Taiki.
Whaia te iti kahurangi ki te tū ohu koe me he maunga teitei. So basically it's like if you seek the treasures or the things that you value, and if you bow your head, let it be to a lofty mountain. I think the main thing for this is that, why I've incorporated this into the slide deck, is because sometimes the mountains that are inside us are actually greater than the mountains we face. And I think having this kōrero and going through the process of understanding sometimes holds us back from actually, the thoughts around it anyway, hold us back from actually progressing further. And I think this whakatauki also speaks to the perseverance of our aspirations. So making sure that we keep going even though, you get your imposter syndrome and everything creeps in, but keep going with what your aspiration is. And I think for me anyway, my aspiration is that there will be a time where bicultural ways of being is normalised and we are on a pathway to re-indigenisation. That is a massive, massive feat. Anyway, what is biculturalism? This is my little baby. She's not that little and cute anymore. Anyway, biculturalism is about two cultures living alongside each other and being able to operate within each other's cultures. And prior to 1840, we lived in a harmonious bicultural society. In the early 1800s, we lived in Aotearoa, and as settlers came to our shores, we shared our cultures with each other. We shared our knowledge of the environment, our language, our way of living. Settlers shared their tools, philosophies, language, and their ways of living as well. And we lived together, embracing all that both cultures had to offer. And this is a picture of the beautiful Hokianga, which is where I whakapapa back to. And slowly, as more settlers came to our shores, things began to change. And there was a need for an agreement, I guess, between iwi and the Crown to kind of help out. Why? Mainly it was because there was, the settlers became unruly. I don't know, that's really biased. Okay. It's a really biased opinion. But also it furthered trade agreements, and it also recognised the absolute authority that Māori had. From a settler's side, it helped protect and encourage the economic interests of both parties, and it increased, it factored in the competition that existed between France and the USA at the time as well. Yeah, and it kind of helped with the concerns that the settlers had at the time as well around how we kind of co-lived together. So this is not doing it justice. I'm going to literally run through Te Tiriti o Waitangi in 3 seconds, but please, if you do have time, spend some time understanding what the treaty actually is. There are 4 articles. I put 3 up here. First one, Kāwanatanga, is about governorship but not sovereignty, and that's the subtle difference between the treaty and Te Tiriti. Rangatiratanga talks about reserving the right for iwi hapu to maintain chieftainship over their land, assets and taonga katoa. And Oretitanga is about the Queen's protection of Māori and giving them the same rights as those of British subjects. Wairuatanga, is about protecting spirituality for all as well, which is the 4th article. So, what is bicultural leadership? It's a leadership approach that embraces and integrates the principles and values of both Māori and non-Māori cultures. It recognises Te Tiriti o Waitangi and seeks to honour the articles. Leaders actively acknowledge and respect Māori culture, language and customs, foster an inclusive environment that values diversity, and ensures Māori perspectives and values are integrated into decision-making processes. Leaders prioritise building meaningful relationships with Māori, and it's about the promotion of cultural competency and understanding among all members of an organisation or community. And why is it important? Leaders honour the intent of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. It enables leaders to, I guess, allow mana mutahaki to exist. So that is mana through self-determination and control over one's destiny. So that's in line with Article 2, Tino Rangatiratanga. And leaders help transform monocultural institutions that have existed for centuries into biculturally led institutions. And if you think back to my original moimoia, my dream about re-indigenisation, that's why I say biculturalism is a start to it. And leaders start to break down the inequality and inequity that exists in a monoculture through the sharing of power, money and privilege. And you know, like as much as that is really easy to say, really easy to write, really hard to do. Just on this though, for Springload, you know, we are in a privileged position to be able to start our bicultural journey. I wouldn't say that we're very much just starting, and it's not about having te reo classes and having waiata sessions or having a Māori co-CEO with my mate, who's the Pākehā co-CEO. But it's not about that, it's about how do you actually incorporate all of this stuff into you every day, and, you know, the slide before, all of this stuff. And how do we kind of just make it a normal way of leading? And I think to sum it all up as well, my dream is that we raise up strong leaders and allow them to lead in a way that creates equity and equality for all. And I think that's, you know, whether you, hopefully we'll get to a pathway of re-indigenisation, but I think even if we go along a journey towards that state, it is at the end of the day all about creating equity and equality. And he kare kia tātou. Kia whakaia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūru ki whakataha ai, kia tūru ki whakataha ai. Haumi e hui e. Ai. It was like a whirlwind, like.
I have a question. So what are some of the key challenges in heading towards bicultural leadership?
I think the big crunchy stuff, if I go back to this here, the biggest part to having true bicultural leadership and biculturalism in general is the sharing of power, money and privilege. And that's the part where you kind of need to get and understand. I think it's you know, like I feel like people at the moment always see it as a sense of loss, but I think if you look at it from a different lens, you'll see it actually as a gain for everyone. If we can share our resources and allow that to happen, lots of stats will change, which will be better for everyone, if that makes sense.
And I guess, can I have another question? So how do we help people who are currently in positions of power to see that it is a gain? Like, how do we help them see, essentially?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's hard.
Is it chicken egg? Like, some if it's hard to make people who have positions of power see that, put people in positions of power wrong with you.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
I think though you'll start to see a shift as, like, I don't want to get ageist on anyone, but as you know, there's generational differences as well. Like there's the whole generation that's coming through is going to push against the systems and the institutions that exist today. And I think, and even the way that we are organised and the way that we work. And I think as that generation comes through and the generation that's sitting there in, you know, leadership and power kind of moves on to retirement, I think there will come a shift, but yeah, and I think if you don't change as well, you will almost get forced to change because of the shift that's coming through. So, yeah. Yes.
I was really curious if you could help bring to life what bicultural decision making looks like at a leadership level, because that just, I think it would help us just imagine how we might change that in our organizations.
So I sit on a board who is we have both this is going to sound very archaic, but we have a Māori caucus and a Tauiwi caucus. And for us, consensus decision making means that we split off into our respective caucuses, respective groups. And we have a kōrero, we nut out whatever it is, and then we come back and we have equal power, I guess, in terms of the decisions that get made. It's not a certain dominant culture that makes the decision. And I think true bicultural decision making it looks like that. It looks like where you agree together without someone asserting power over the other. Yes. Oh.
Do you want to share a bit about the Māori rōpū that you're nurturing at Springload?
Yep, so at Springload, when I started at Springload, there was 2 Māori. I remember walking in the door and thinking, oh, not many people look like me. And then slowly over time, both I think push from our clients as well as from internally, curiosity, I guess. We've developed a rōpū now. We've got 15% of our organisation's Māori, which is awesome because for me anyway, I don't suffer from isolation sickness, where you're the only one that everyone looks for you to do the karakia, to do everything Māori, and there's a rōpū of us, and we can each share that load. We can work together, create that sense of belonging for each other. Oh, yeah.
As one of the older people you were talking about, I'd like to say that, celebrating Matariki and the uprising of Te Reo and Māori Tonga really has been one of the most wonderful circumstances of my life.
Oh, yeah.
Because I grew up at a time when Māori were not valued. And it feels like coming to be whole in this country.
Yeah.
So kia ora.
Thank you.
And also in terms of sharing, a few years ago I went to this thing about all the streams and stuff under the Wellington city, and it was taken by a Māori guy, and just the way he spoke and the way he was is such a rich contribution to humanity. And
Kia ora.
yeah, I just feel we've shot ourselves in the foot with Pākehā, and I'm glad that there's a bit of healing happening.
Yeah, that's so true. I think even, now I'm going to sound like I'm really old, but even when I can remember when I started working and just seeing how it's changed, I think how people are embracing Te Ao Māori now, where it's not like when I first started, you're kind of like a rarity, but it also became quite normal. And so you would go into spaces and you're like, okay, I have to conform to a certain way because that's how I get accepted. Whereas now, I think it's like heaps has changed, and it is quite cool. And then I think back to my dad, when my dad was even working, and the mama and the hurt that he had to go through to kind of, to where we are today. And it's like, it's amazing to see, and awesome to see how, we are combining our cultures together, and we are, I think, embracing that richness as you spoke about.
How do you make sure when you're hiring at Springload that you're getting people in the door that align with this bicultural approach and kind of align with the values?
Did you say how?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, to be honest, our values haven't changed, I don't think, for a while. So our values are, as much we do value this. It's not like it's kind of, we're not like at the, we're at the very start of our journey as well. And I know, for us, I feel like it is a privilege. It is a privilege to exist in an organisation where this is embraced. And, you go into other organisations and it's not. And you're kind of like, I'm always like, my neck gets a little kinky. But because it's so normal for us now, and, we will talk about it like when we're in the interview process, etc. And I feel like everyone actually that we do hire, that I interview anyway, embraces this, and I think also has a desire to understand Te Ao Māori to a fuller extent, which is quite cool.
Can I add?
Oh yeah. You should really talk about this.
We also tell our story. We tell the story of the work we do and the clients that we work with, and how honouring Te Treaty is important to them and how we help them do that. And also the story of what we do internally. We Instagram about our Matariki dinners and all the things we do, and that helps. I guess by telling our story, people come to us because they know what we're about.
Yes.
It's a pretty big question. So how do we support biculturalism and bicultural leadership in our organisations without it falling into the space of greenwashing and rainbow washing or putting unfair labour on the Māori populations in our teams?
Yeah.
That's a big one.
I kind of think though you can't really have a bicultural leadership if you don't have bicultural leaders.
Yeah.
So that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And often what we see as well is that Māori bubble up from the bottom, and they stay at the bottom, and there needs to be an elevation, I think. I know this is going to sound really biased, but there needs to be an elevation of Māori, and you need to have Māori as your leaders as well. And, like if you look even at the public service to see how many CEOs are Māori, you literally can count them on one hand. So it kind of starts with how do we actually get bicultural leaders? How do we have the conversation at the table and build it from there? But you can't, you kind of need to have the leaders.
Yeah.
I remember when you very early came onto Springload, I remember you saying to me and to us, if you don't change how you do things, nothing will change. And that felt like opening the door to being very deliberate about who we were trying to encourage to be a leader and supporting to move into that leadership space.
Cool.
Yes, I was informed that this would be an emotional and you delivered. Thank you so much. Everyone give it up for Emily.